Hi everyone, great to see you all, and hope you're all keeping well and keeping safe. Welcome to my kitchen and dining room for this webinar. Claire asked me to sort of give a little talk on obviously a number of you are working with young talented athletes in your local clubs and everything, and actually just to talk about some of the things that you can possibly do to try and work with those athletes given the sort of the current situation. So what I was going to do is just sort of talk through kind of what we're doing with our youth squads, some of the things that we're trying to do with them if they've got equipment available, and some of them if they haven't. And hopefully from that you can take away some ideas and everything that can maybe help you with what you're doing at home. It'd probably be prudent of me to introduce myself. I know many of you do know me, but if you don't, my name's Matt Stanforth. I'm the program manager with Table Tennis England, working in the performance team. I work very closely with Alan Cook in the kind of the setting up of predominantly all the kind of the talent side of the pathway and everything. So just to say, if anyone's got any questions, if you want to put those down in the sort of the chat section and everything, Claire can sort of, I'll hopefully see those, and Claire can feed those to me as well. And at the end, we'll have a sort of a few minutes and everything for some questions and answers as well, if anything comes out. And following here, I'll share all the slides and some of the resources that we've put together that you can use and hopefully will help you back at home. So hope that's okay, and yeah, we'll make a start. I suppose just talking through kind of what we did as our sort of initial steps. Obviously, the situation we're in is completely unique and everything. And suddenly, we obviously the young players, especially, will find themselves in a situation that threw everything completely out of the box, really. So in terms of their personal lives, school work, and obviously their table tennis side of things. So the first thing, and it sounds really obvious, is actually we just try to touch base with all the players, and if you can just make sure that they're okay. Some of them were quite excited by the prospect of the fact they didn't have any school, which was great. But there was also some that were actually already starting to feel some sort of anxiety and things about the situation. And from the table tennis point of view, is actually that loss of that regular routine of being able to go to the club, see their coach, see their teammates and everything, had suddenly been sort of stripped away from them. And a lot of them were actually feeling the loss of that. So the first thing we did is actually just make sure they're all right. The second thing was actually then to actually reassure them, you know, to really sort of give the message out about this is a situation that's completely outside your control. You can't do anything about it, but you're okay. And actually, we can look at some other things that are going to help you on your performance journey. Because in order for them to be the best they can be, it's more than just hitting the ball on the table. There's lots of other skills that they need to have if they're going to have a chance of making that step. So the first thing was actually just, are they okay? And let's get this sort of the feedback on the ground and just kind of reassure them on the situation. From there, what we actually did is we did a quick online questionnaire, really to find out more about their situations. So a number of them, I put there about their schoolwork expectations. Some of the players, their schools have been quite proactive in making sure that they had sufficient work to do at home, but we're actually setting quite a structure with that. And some of them weren't. So we need to understand a little bit more about what their expectations were from an academic perspective. And then from there, we wanted to gain more of an understanding of what their situation is. So firstly, their family situation, and namely if any of those family members were key workers or workers that worked within the NHS, because we recognised straight away that would have an effect. So understanding that situation from a family point of view for us was very important. And then from the practical thing of actually what do they have at home that they can use. You'll have some players, obviously having a bat and ball hopefully should be a given, but some players do have a table at home, some players don't. Some people have a table and a robot, some don't. Some have a family member who also plays. And what we saw was when we looked across our squads was quite a broad spectrum of what people had and what people didn't have. But gaining an understanding of that, so we can manage our own expectations of what they can do, and they can manage their own expectations of what they're able to, we thought was very, very important. And then we try to look at what technology we had available to us that we could try and utilize. So, and I'm going to talk about some of the apps and the programs we're using, all very, very simple, and many of you are probably already aware of them. But I'll just talk to you through about a little bit more about how we're using them to try and work through this situation. And as I sort of put that, we did a quick online questionnaire. We used something called Google Forms just to try and quickly find out what everyone's doing and collect that information. And from there, we could then build a picture about what we can try and do to help the players as much as possible. So the first thing which we want to do is make sure that the communication was regular. If you think to what a player's normal weekly situation is, they could be visiting a club 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week, and suddenly that has been taken away. And also from a national point of view, those regular kind of monthly or 2 and 3 weekly sort of training camps were suddenly, we haven't been able to do them. So we wanted to set up kind of a regular communication with them. So again, so we can check in and make sure they're all right, but also to try and make sure that connection, especially with their teammates and peers, because we recognize that was something that was now lost, and we need to try and keep that going as much as possible. And from those group sessions, we then try to derive if we need to actually set up any one-to-one sessions. From our point of view, it's not possible to do one-to-one sessions with everyone. We have probably somewhere in the region of about 80 players across the pathway. So if we were to do one-to-one sessions with everyone, that would take quite a long time. So in general, we try to break them into smaller groups of 5 and 6. But where we recognise actually there's maybe some additional support needed or additional discussions needed, we'll arrange one-to-one discussions and do that through a kind of a video call. So that's why I've kind of put there as appropriate. And then it was to kind of look at kind of what activity we could do. And I brought this into kind of 2 sections. First of all, there's the table tennis activity. So again, taking into consideration what people have, we need to set a kind of a program that could help players who did have a table and help people who didn't have a table. And for those who did have a table, if they had something to practice with a robot, something that they could do as well. So we had to kind of break it into maybe 3 parts. So the types of work that we've set for our young players in terms of off the table for table tennis is predominantly a lot of shadow play, because they can actually utilize a number of different spaces, whether that's in the garden, if that's actually using a dining room table, whatever it is. They don't actually need something physically there, but there's lots of things they can actually utilize in the home or garden to be able to recreate that sort of shadow play. And shadow play is a really effective tool for them to use as well. We thought this would be a really good time to actually start looking at some racket skills tasks. One thing we felt that has lacked in the last kind of 5 to 10 years, and I think that's when I played, is actually players having a bat and a ball and actually just playing around with what they can do with a bat and ball in the hand. And there's so much unconscious learning that happens within that, in terms of feel, in terms of control and things like that, that can really help the player. And we don't see the young players doing that as much as they used to. So we thought there's actually something that we can have a little bit of fun with, but actually there's a lot of key learning in there to actually do a lot of different types of racket skills tasks. And I'll come on to, I've got a couple of videos later on to show you just a simple things that we're doing, but something that we can set a challenge with, but also we're actually helping their table tennis skill alongside that. And then particularly for our younger players, and looking at our Hawks players, which are aged between everything between 8 and 11 and 12 years old, is actually spin development for service. It's something you don't actually need a table for. Being able to learn how to contact the ball incredibly fine with good acceleration from the wrist and forearm is something that's really key for developing the spin for service. And we, as many of you know, Craig Bryant is a brilliant coach and a specialist, especially in the service area. And he kindly put together a little tutorial clip for us that we could send to the players, and they could use that as a guide. But it's something they can actually do on the carpet, on a dining room table, there's lots of different ways they can do that. So we saw that as sort of an opportunity to develop that side of the game for them as well. On the table, a little bit more straightforward. Again, shadow play is something that we can use. So they can use shadow play on the table. But we thought this was a great sort of time to really emphasize work in terms of service practice. A key trademark we ask all of our players to have is really good quality serve and receive. And we had a Q&A session with Liam Pitchford yesterday with two of our groups, and he emphasized the importance of the quality of the serve and receive at that top level, and some of the learning, if he could be a young player again, really working hard on the service side of things at a younger age, he felt would have really helped him in the latter stages and things. But it's only something he's learned as he's gone through his career. So actually doing a lot of service drills and again making them challenging is something we can make a real impact on. And then we have some situations where families or players have a sibling or a parent who also plays as well. So actually setting some specific training drills that they can try and do at home which is typically a more traditional thing that you can do in the hall, was also something we did. But the big thing with everything we've done in terms of the table tennis is you set challenges within it, because I think that's really, really important. If we just said we want you to do shadow play and do a drill, the players would become very bored and disengaged quite early on. Actually setting different challenges within those tasks is a way of keeping them engaged, also setting some challenges within the group. So an example we've done with a racket skills test, you'll see an example from Paul Drinkhold, what he's asked them to do, but we've actually asked them to record and send in the most consecutive amounts of this task they can do in a row. And we've created a leaderboard within all of our group with the winner that we'll put on social media, and we'll also, when everything's back to normal, we'll send them a small prize. So it's creating a little bit of competition within the pathway. It's a little bit of fun, but they're also practicing something that will be meaningful for all of them later on. And then alongside the challenges, also setting them individual challenges and tasks within what they can do. So understanding what their situation is and what they're able to do, and actually giving them some challenges and tasks that they need to do, and that we'll talk about sort of on an individual basis. Does that all sound okay so far, guys? Is that any? The chat part isn't coming up on my screen when I'm sharing my screen. So Claire, if there's any questions that are popping out, just let me know, and I'll try and answer them as we go along.
Thanks, Matt. There's no questions in there at the moment.
Lovely. Okay, so I'm hoping these are going to work. So this is just a couple of examples that I've just talked about. So you've got the top right, which is a screenshot of, we use a program called Zoom, which many of you will be very familiar with now, I'm sure. That was a small group session we did with one of our Hope squad. The players were more interested than what that screenshot hopefully gives credit for. There's a couple that were looking, like with Casper there, looking a little bit disengaged, but that was more of a sort of a first catch up. On the sort of the top left, this is what we got Paul Drinkhold to do. It was just a little racket skill test. So I'll just play this for you. I hope this comes through okay. I'll just put the volume up and everything. So I'll just play this for you. If it all works. Come on, technology. Okay, right. Unfortunately, it's frozen on my laptop, so I apologise. What I can do though is after this, I can actually share a folder on Google Drive that's got all these clips in. So yeah, unfortunately, the technology has let me down there. But just to talk through the one with Paul Drinkhold on the top left was a racket skills test where he got the players to bounce the ball on the flat of his bat, the edge, the backhand side, and then the opposite edge, and then back around. So again, very simple. And the players had to count how many completed sets they needed to do. And he also gave just some messages of reassurance as well. The other clip was going to be the one that shows the Tiltonist England logo. It was actually the spin development side of things that I mentioned, the clip that Craig Bryant did of some tasks the players can do at home. Again, not needing a table, not needing any specialist equipment, but some little tasks that they can use to help develop the spin in terms of serve and everything. So apologies, the videos have let me down. But yeah, I'll share these with you, and hopefully you can watch those and they'll be of use to you. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So apologies, my laptop is now going very slow because of those video clips. So I'll be back with you shortly. But whilst that's doing that, if anyone's got any questions, if they want to unmute and ask me any questions on what I've talked about so far, just whilst my laptop hopefully catches up, is there anything anyone wants to ask just yet? No, all okay? Excellent. Okay, right. So, so that was just obviously a summary of the kind of the work we can do in terms of table tennis, the actual hitting the ball. But then we also recognise that actually this is a real opportunity to look at a number of things off the table that are really, really important for the players to develop. So a glaringly obvious one was in terms of physical conditioning. So in order, if athletes are going to have a chance to be successful in the future and find out what they're capable of, being physically fit and robust is absolutely key, and is one of the kind of the trademarks we have threaded throughout all the performance pathway. So we set up a physical conditioning program, and we wanted to make it as the real key to this was making it as simple as possible. So understanding that the players don't really have any specialist equipment or anything at home. Many have a skipping rope, and if they didn't, you could also order them online through Amazon, and also a TheraBand. That's about the limit of the equipment that the players needed to be able to sort of do the program. But there's so many different things they can do that's going to give them hopefully give them a really good physical platform. So we put together a physical program. We actually put that into 3 levels. So I've put there, we put bronze, silver and gold levels that basically increase the difficulty as you went through. So a player could start on bronze. If they found that quite easy, they could progress straight onto silver straight away. And again, if they're on silver and they found that straightforward, they could go on to gold. And we brought that into many different circuits. So we had a leg circuit, we had a core circuit, and we had an upper body strength circuit as well. And then alongside that, we did different kind of speed and agility and running activities that they can do at home. The big thing that we emphasize with all the players is, 1, it's simple. 2, tweak the program that suits your needs at home. So if you're not able to go out for a run, then that's fine. Replace that with something else, and actually empower the athlete to take a bit of ownership of what they're doing. And for each of those exercises that we did, we got one of our coaches, Gavin Evans, who I'm sure you know, who works our men's team. He's also a strength and conditioning coach as well. He put together some basic video clips of the different exercises that we wanted the players to do. So they had a visual guide to be able to help them with what we're asking them to do and make it a lot easier to understand. And again, I'll share the folder of those with all those different clips, so you can hopefully use those as well. But alongside that, what we started doing is doing some live physical sessions that are led by one of the coaches or one of the players. So coming up next week, we've got Tintin Ho, who's going to lead a leg session with our Hope squad. We've got Tom Jarvis, who's going to lead a strength and conditioning session with our Aspire group. And even between the men's team, they've all taken turns in actually leading a physical session between them to make it challenging, and them all taking a bit of ownership of what they're doing. So we've got some things that people can do in isolation, but we're also trying to bring them together online and utilize technology so we can make it a sort of a group thing that they're all working through together. Other things we've done, match analysis and player analysis. YouTube is an absolute brilliant tool for getting hold of lots of different matches and everything. And actually, this is a real opportunity to actually pick a match out and sit down with your players to go through watching a match and actually start to talk about various things, whether that's from a tactical perspective and about any changes you see within a match, but also from an attribute point of view. So what attributes are the players demonstrating when they're in a difficult situation? What attributes and body language do you see when the players are up in a match? All different things like that, which are really, really important for the players to understand, again, because these are performance traits that are important down the line. Another thing we've done is actually getting the players to pick a player that they like in the world. So a popular one for the youth squads has been Zuzin and Dmitry Oktarov. They're two of the popular players with especially predominantly the young lads in our groups. And actually getting them to do a project on, I want you to profile all the different attributes that player has that makes them so good. So is it about their body language? Is it about their physicality? What is it that in your mind that makes them a world-class player? Again, to try and help the players understand what does performance in our sport look like, and get those ideas and everything in their minds, but then also get themselves to measure themselves against that themselves at the same time. We've started doing a lot of sessions on different mental approaches, and started talking about the sort of the theory and everything. Actually, this time is a real good sort of time to work on those kinds of skills. It's a big thing that we push on within our England squads. So as much as we want the players on the table hitting the ball, we know that unless the players have got the mental attributes to be able to be successful, they're going to find it very, very difficult at the top end. So actually starting to talk about some of those situations now is a great opportunity to do that, because often as a coach, you're leading a session in an evening, fitting everything in is very difficult, and you want to get them on the table and playing as much as possible, which I completely understand. And as much as you have an awareness of these things, having the time to be able to do it is often a challenge. So actually using this time to look at some of those things is really key. We're using a book. I'll hold this one up. So this is a book, and I've got a screenshot of it on the left screen. It's just called Mental Strength. It's by a lady called Malin Pettersson, who's a coach in Sweden. She now is involved with Spin in New York and doing things there. But she wrote this book in conjunction with Jan-Ove Waldner. And there's actually some really good insights from stuff that from his own experience. There's some practical things that you can apply as well. And for your own reading, there's actually a couple of other good books that, I'll send you a list of these, but things actually the performance team have been using. So this one called The Pressure Principle has been a really good book for some practical things that you can do. And the gentleman in this book, he's worked with the likes of Johnny Wilkinson and things like that, players like that in top level sports, but different approaches to being able to handle different pressure situations. A book we're working through at the moment by Brad Gilbert called Winning Ugly. And this actually reflects, someone who wasn't the most, what you would typically call talented player, but he used his mindset as a way of beating people. He was in a generation of likes of John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, Boris Becker, people like that. And actually he talks a lot about how he picked up on different mental attributes of those players and how he developed his skills to be able to manipulate those as much as possible to gain an advantage. So actually things around the kind of the mental side of the sport and a lot that you can apply to table tennis is in there. And another one, probably more from a coaching point of view rather than working with your players, is this one called Mindset by a lady called Carol Dweck. And, that's a real good book about a growth mindset, which is really, really key for performance. So how to, if you're very sort of fixed in how you see things, being open-minded to new ideas and everything is impossible. Actually, being able to explore new ideas and being able to critically reflect, in order to do that effectively, having a growth mindset is really, really important. So again, a really, really good book, and I'll send you a list of some of those that might be of interest in reading for you as well.
Matt, that section's prompted a few questions, which is great.
Okay, excellent.
First of all, just obviously this is focusing on off-table activity, but just a question around how many of the players actually have tables, do have tables at home.
Yeah, good question. From what we understand with all the players, about 2/3 of the players have tables. And within those, I'd probably say about 15% of those players have someone at home that they can practice with. So whether that's a brother or sister who plays, or a mother or father who plays as well, I'd probably say about 15% have someone they can practice with. About another 10% on top of that have a robot that they can use, and then the rest will have a table, just have a table. So that's why it was really important that we had to pitch it to everyone's kind of pitch a program to everyone's needs, because everyone's situation is different. But the big thing that we tried to reiterate, and I'll mention later on, is that getting a place to focus on what they can do and what they can spend their energy in, and not actually worry about what other people have got or what they don't have, because all that will do is just breed negativity within them and get them to get sort of increase worry and anxiety. Actually focus your energy on what you can do and what you can make a difference on, and you will hopefully be better for it in the long run.
Great. And there's obviously lots of information here as well. How are you communicating this with the players, and how much are the parents involved?
Yeah, well, I'm going to come on to that a little bit. So I'm going to talk a bit about the technology we use. So very quickly, we use an app called Microsoft Teams as a main communication tool, and that goes to parents. That way we can, if we're going to set up meetings and everything, that can all go through that. And I think what's really important for you as coaches as well is from a safeguarding perspective. So don't get caught up into sending individual WhatsApps to players. Actually include the parents within that conversation more to safeguard yourself, as well as obviously the player and everything. So I think Judy Rogers actually produced a couple of guidelines in terms of online safeguarding and everything as well, which is really, really important. So in terms of when we set up one-to-one meetings and everything, parents and everything are always involved, or aware, or they give their consent that we can do a video call with maybe a group of players, but we try and avoid one-to-ones just with coach and player. We make sure we've got someone else involved as well. And then some of the other technology bits that we use in terms of videos and things like that, I'm going to come into in sort of on a later slide. Last couple of things really from the off-tail activity, life skills. Something we're going to do. We haven't done it yet, but we recognise is really, really important. So players at a certain stage hopefully will make, if they're going to be a performance player and hopefully a future senior player, they will at some point, especially in their latter teenage years, will make a step abroad. And one of the aims of the program is to make sure that the players have the coping mechanisms to be able to make that step. So one is that their table tennis is good enough. Two is that they're physically and mentally robust enough to be able to make that step. But thirdly is actually they've got the life skills to be able to cope with that. So to suddenly go from living at mum and dad's home to now living in Germany and I have to cook for myself, I have to go and do my own shopping, I have to do my own washing. They are skills that they will need to have. Being able to manage their time are skills that they will need to have. And a most recent kind of example, Tom Jarvis, as a young player, I worked with him as a junior. His mum did everything for him, packed his bag and everything. As much as Tom works his socks off on the table, the actual life skills part, he didn't really have because mum had been there to do a lot of the things for him. So when he initially made that step abroad, to start off with, he found it a bit of a struggle. He was eating the same meal every night because that's the only meal he knew how to cook. He was having a bit of trouble using a washing machine. All things like that, which he never realised he needed these skills in order to be able to cope with that situation. So obviously, with the situation we're in now, players are at home. Actually, this is a good opportunity to start looking at some of these life skills. So one thing we're going to do is actually set them a cooking challenge and set them a washing challenge and get them to record themselves doing it and just share some feedback with the group and everything. So it sounds a little bit fun, but actually there's a lot of learning that's really important that they can get out from that as well. And then the last thing is it was doing Q&A sessions. So yesterday we had our first Q&A session with Liam Pitchford for our England Junior squad and Aspire squad, where they were able to pick his brains about his table tennis journey. And that was a great sort of hour session with him where he really talked very levelly about the sort of journey he went through as a junior, some of the learning he's now had as a senior, that if he'd have known that as a junior player or a cadet player, he would have done that now. So there was some really important messages for them and a great opportunity for the for the young players to pick the brains of a world-class athlete in our sport. Again, just a screenshot of just some of the examples. I won't try and play the video of Gavin there, who's gonna beautifully demonstrate how to do some press-ups. But we just did these very short video clips of different exercises we want the players to do. Again, I will share this sort of folder with you with all these different clips in. The screenshot there, the book that we've been using, Mental Strength by Marlin Petterson. And the grid at the bottom is actually the training program that we've sent to each of the players. So it's broken down again into the different circuits for leg circuit, upper body, a speed circuit and a core circuit. There's links there that take them to the videos as well. And then below that is how we've broken it down to bronze, silver and gold. So that tells you how many sets they're going to do and how many repetitions per set. And again, I'll share this with everyone as well, so you can hopefully use that, but don't be afraid to tweak that for your players in back at home as well. Moving on to the next one. My screen's frozen again. Right, I've managed to look at the chat. Right, okay, let's go back to, sorry, I've jumped ahead a bit there. Let's go back a second. Right, so yeah, so in terms of the kind of the activity and the technology we're using to be able to do all this work, as you're doing now using Zoom in terms of an online video conferencing app and everything has been really, really good, because not only can you use it to communicate, you can also record the sessions as well. So this has been, you know, I'm sure many of you are using this possibly in your professional lives and everything as well, if you're not already using it with your squads. But I think actually arranging some times when you're going to get together as a group, so with your training groups from your clubs and everything, and getting everyone together, I think is a really important part, and it's something that the players and parents have really appreciated. We've asked the players to put together a weekly summary sheet. So it's just a basic sheet so they can log what kind of activity they've done, and I'll show that example to you in the next slide. And they upload that to Google Drive. Google Drive is completely free up to a certain level. So we set up independent folders for each player, and every Sunday at the end of the day, they just upload what they've done. And then when we have those group discussions or sort of smaller sort of two players, two coaches discussions, we can talk through what they've done. But there's also a bit in there about just some basic self-reflection questions, because we understand that for the players to be good independent learners, that process of self-reflection is an important skill for them to look at. So I put there, you know, the basic reflections I can do. One point that they've been happy with that week, one point that they found most challenging, what they've tried to do to overcome it, and if they would do anything different next time. So they're kind of learning from their own processes. It's something that takes a lot of practice. So at first you don't get the most detailed questions. So for example, what went well? My forehand drive. Great. What was it about your forehand drive? So you as a coach can use your skill of questioning to probe that a little bit deeper and get them to think a little bit deeper. But as you refine it more, their self-reflection becomes more and more efficient and effective. We've set squad challenges and tasks. So I mentioned before about the racket skills challenges and how many times you completed it. We've got physical challenges. So how many press-ups you can do in a minute, how many sit-ups you can do in a minute. And we've actually kept squad leaderboards of who's been able to complete the most. But the way that we've actually tried to capture that is something used in terms of videos, is using something called Huddle Technique, which is a free app it's an iOS app. Unfortunately, it's not available on Android. But that's been a really good way of being able to share clips, and you can actually feed back on the clips and give comments and everything. And just an example, so we have 80 players across all of our squads. We've had an excess of 300 clips sent in from all the players about where it's physical activities they've done, shadow play they've done, on the table activity, and we're able to give some feedback on some of those clips to try and help them in sort of during this situation. That's the next slide. That's an example of the weekly sheet that they complete. So again, very basic, and I can send that template to you. So again, just log in what they've done, but then that reflection bit, that's the really important bit for us, is are they developing that ability to self-learn and self-grow? Again, trying to build in those coping mechanisms for if they make that step abroad at one point, they will need to be a lot more responsible for their own learning. So developing those skills at an earlier age is really, really important. And there's some screenshots of just what huddle technique looks like. So the bottom left, you've got a player, Toby Ellis, practicing with his sister. What's been really, really amazing from our point of view is how, despite space restrictions, equipment restriction, everything, the players have actually found a way to do a lot of things. And I think they've even surprised themselves with what they've been able to do. The great thing with the app as well is it's a bit of a performance analysis app. So you can actually slow the clip down, speed it up. You can compare one clip against another. It's got a lot of functionality within it that you can use. And it's a free app. If you want to store lots of clips, then you do have to start paying. But initially, it's a free app that you can actually use. So I would definitely recommend it. And yeah, the other screenshots. So the top left, that shows all the notifications getting all the different clips that we've been sent. But you can actually set up a profile for each of our athletes. And if they tag themselves in the clip, you can sort by athlete. So for instance, Toby, we can click on his name and see all the clips that Toby's done. We can click on another player and see all the clips that they've done and everything. So being able to analyze and everything from a coaching perspective is a lot easier to do that. So again, that's on iOS. I can send you the link for that as well. But a really useful app that we've utilized to be able to share videos of what's been happening. So really, just in summary, and the sort of the key things that we've learned, communication is absolutely key. It's very easy to slip that, you know, we don't have the club sessions and everything anymore. I think keeping those players engaged, actually just keep talking to them, even if it's not about table tennis specific, just checking if they're okay and stuff, and actually booking in times of when you're going to catch up with them again, I think is really, really important. But keeping that connection throughout this situation has been not only greatly appreciated by the players, but greatly appreciated by the parents as well. So I think communication is key, and finding, I mean, I've mentioned we use Zoom there, but find what works for you. So whether that's FaceTime, whether that's Skype, it doesn't matter. I think it's finding what works for your group, but keeping that communication open and keeping it like this rather than just on text or anything is really, really important. I think whatever you set your players is to set challenges and tasks within that. Make it, you know, within your groups, within your clubs, setting challenges between everyone as a group, I think is really, really, has been really well received and very effective. But also give structure and routine to what they do. So we had some athletes who, as a result of it, you know, being at home, we're not getting up until a lot later in the morning and things. Actually, we've sometimes set out a time at 9 o'clock. You need to do your physical session on your upper body. At 10 o'clock, you need to do this. The next day, you need to do it at that time. And actually setting some structure of when they're going to do it, because a lot of that structure and routine has been taken away from them with the situation. So I think if you're able to utilize that, that's really important. Utilize the technology available, and again, see what works for you. So again, I've given some examples, but there's lots of other things out there that you can tap into as well. I think finding what works with you is really, really key. Be creative. There's no right or wrong way in this situation. Anything that gets the players to have a bat and a ball in their hands, I think is a plus. So if you find different challenges, as much as it may not completely relate to what they're doing on a table, if they have a bat and a ball in their hands, they're keeping that engagement with the sport. So be creative with that. And we've asked the players to also be creative with it. So Toby Ellis, for instance, he actually set a challenge for our senior players where he played one backhand and one ball behind his back, one backhand, one ball behind his back, whatever it is. I think getting the players to actually be creative with that is really, really powerful. I think continually reiterate that they can only control the controllables. So you will go through periods where they may be starting to feel a little bit lower. They may be starting to think about, you know, my teammates are able to do this, but I'm not able to do that. I actually miss going to the club. Everything. I think it's just reiterating, look, this is a situation outside your control. What can you do that's going to help you be a better table tennis player? The physical conditioning is an area that is often missed. But if they're going to be good, they need to be physically fit. So what a great opportunity to put that work in and to remind them of the goals and everything. If they want to be good, this all connects with being a top table tennis player. You will continue to sort of reassure and support. You know, like I say, you'll often see that the players are maybe starting to go through what you would call the grief cycle, where there's some denial, there's some anger, there's all different things that, just as you agreed for the loss of something, they've actually lost their ability to do the sport in the way that they did before. So I think being aware of that is number one, but two, continually to reassure and support. But the ultimate part is, you know, the player and your welfare is the most important part in this situation. We've got to remember, as much as we want to, you know, table tennis is our love and our passion, you know, everyone's welfare is the most important thing. And actually, as coaches, sort of supporting each other, just dropping each other a measure, how you're doing, sharing ideas and everything I think is really key, especially at this point in time. You'll be surprised at actually how much you can actually get from those situations. So that's it from me. I know I've rattled on a lot there. I've talked for a good 45 minutes actually, which is I wasn't expecting, but I hope that's given you some ideas, and happy to obviously take any questions if anyone's would like to ask me anything.
Thank you, Matt. Some really great ideas coming through as well in terms of sharing ideas and thoughts around different books that people have read. Nick says that he used Microsoft Stream to upload videos and record meetings. So we'll collate all of these from the chat and circulate, as well as a follow-up. There is mention as well of a tweet from the England junior squad, which is a 25-minute group physical challenge. Is that something that we're looking to do more of, or is that kind of a one-off thing at the moment?
We're trying to keep it varied. So, I mean, the one thing that we found from doing a lot of this online stuff is actually there is a lot of work involved. And for instance, I've hardly been off Zoom this morning since 8:30, which is great. But actually getting the things through to set things up and everything, then time becomes a challenge. So what we try to do is we're trying to kind of keep a rolling program, keeping about a week to 2 weeks ahead. We're trying not to overcommit ourselves because we understand there's a lot of work that's involved with getting things set up. But yeah, we're trying to keep it very varied as well. So it's keeping things fresh. So sometimes we'll do a physical session. Sometimes we'll do a Q&A session. Sometimes we'll do a group sort of mindset session. So I think keeping a variety of topics and not just doing the same all the time is really key to keep the motivation there.
Thank you. And are you able to provide an update on the application process now for England programmes like Hopes and Aspires, or is that something that you'd rather pick up another time?
No, I can just update you where we are at the moment. So obviously the applications and everything has been open for about a month and a half, 2 months now, and the closing date originally was the end of this month. We're still keeping to that deadline at the moment, but what the actual next step will be in terms of assessment, we're unsure because we just don't know how long it's going to be until we can get back in the hall and everything. So it's something we've got a number of ideas, but until we kind of know when we can get back in the hall, it's very, very difficult to say what that process will be. So my advice, if you have a young player who you feel is ready for those squads or is of interest for those squads, get the application in. They'll get a receipt of when that happens. I think explain that there'll be a delay in terms of what we communicate out for the next steps, because I think for Hopes and Aspire, the original assessments were going to be towards the end of June. It's unlikely that's going to happen. It may be that the beginning of the season is when we look at the assessment, the actual physical assessment process. So, but we will keep you up. Anyone who applies, we will keep you updated on what that process will look like as and when we know any more information.
And do we have any recommendations on good books on tactics? I guess if anyone else listening in has some recommendations, please pop them in the chat box, and as I say, we'll send them round too.
Not that I'm aware of. I think one thing that actually really helps with this, and it's a question I remember asking the same question when I was kind of just getting into the coaching side of things and everything, is actually what I found is one of the best ways to sort of learn about tactics is actually to watch a lot of table tennis and actually just have some open discussions about what you're seeing. So starting off from kind of like a performance analysis point of view and actually making some notes of how many serves, how many points were won on serve, how many points were won on receive, Was it hitting forehand winners, backhand winners, and keep it very basic to start off with. And from there, expand the conversation and see if you notice any pattern. Because a lot of things with tactics is pattern recognition. So I think encouraging the players and yourselves to actually watch more table tennis, which is and have some small group discussions about what you're seeing. I think that is actually a really good way of starting that tactics kind of discussion. And that book by Brad Gilbert, he talks a lot about a tactical point of view, but in terms of looking at body language and mindset. So his understanding of how Boris Becker reacted when he was under pressure, how John McEnroe reacted when he was under pressure, that was a little bit different to what we understand, how Jimmy Connors reacted. And he developed different ways of what would actually get under their skin. What have I noticed? When they do this and I do that, what happens? And then he built up those sort of tactics and things. So actually the Winning Ugly book it gives you some good mindset ideas, but also actually some tactical things that you can learn in terms of mindset. And working closely with Alan Cook, he talks a lot about that in his generation, that a lot of the players knew what they needed to do to get under each other's skin and actually recognize that, right, that player's starting to crack now, right, this is where I need to put the pressure on and things.
Great, thank you. There aren't any more questions at the moment, so just hold fire a couple of seconds, see if any last bits come in. But if not, I think we're about there.
Okay. Well, I'll share these slides and a folder with all the clips in. So please feel free to use these, and I hope they can help you. But if you've ever got any questions or anything, just please feel free to email us, and we'll be happy to help as much as we can.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone, and hope to speak to you all soon.
Right. Thank you. Take care, guys.